Oh man. So I'd come home from playing in Holland, and I'd done something to my shoulder that required surgery. So I came home, got surgery on my shoulder, and every summer that I'd been home, I'd been working for a camp organization up in Sebastopol, largest camp organization in the western region of the U.S. called the Zima Brothers Soccer Camps. And because it was a dormant period as far as playing goes, and I couldn't play anyways, I was working in the office for a little period of time. Just didn't entail a whole lot. And Andrew one day tells me that he got a phone call from a parent in Marin who was associated with the school that was looking for a soccer coach and really wanted to up the profile of their soccer program. And said he certainly wasn't interested, but was I interested in doing that? And I said, well, you know, I'm interested, I'll look into it. So I came down and I spoke to, I guess, one mother, Janice Anderson Graham, was the person that was, I don't know if she was responsible, but certainly took it on herself to see if she could get out there and find a quality coach. Her son was going to be a sophomore that following year. And Braden was a very good player, and he was at a school that, you know, sports wasn't a priority, and the soccer team was good, but certainly wasn't great. And my understanding is that they didn't have a coach prior who was, you know, soccer centric, I guess. So I spoke to Janice. Janice wanted to continue the process. I was still intrigued. So after that, I met Bodie, who just was amazing, and she blew me away. I continued to do it every year thereafter that I continued to work with her. She's just an amazing person. And it was funny because I remember getting in that meeting and thinking, okay, you know, I'm obviously have to speak soccer, you know, talk about tactics and so on and so forth, but didn't go that way at all. She wanted to know what I would do if a kid was being teased. So it became clear to me that this is what happened prior to me coming in, was just team building, hazing, and those were the primary concerns in creating a safe environment, at least from her end, because she couldn't speak to the soccer component of it. So after meeting with Bodie, they then decided to get a group of the returning players, because this was late spring, and get a group of the boys players to interview me. So I remember meeting in what is now the fitness room, then at the time was some sort of student center, and had like foosball tables, ping pong table, couches. I don't think it was used very much. So I met 4 or 5 of the boys who were super critical, you know, were both clearly trying to get as much out of me as they could, but at the same time trying to impress me. It was really clear they were slightly comfortable. I mean, they were sophomores and juniors in high school. But, you know, I could tell they were really cool kids and, you know, really wanted to have a good soccer experience. So I thought about it for a while, and then I decided, yeah, I mean, I love this place, and I loved everybody that was associated with it. And I really hadn't felt that way about any place I'd been before. So I decided to do it, and, you know, at the time I thought I'd be here for maybe 3 to 5 years. And here I am 18 years later, so I think it just speaks volumes to how much I fell in love with the school and the people that are associated with it. So I wound up talking to Mark Stogner, who was the AD at the time. Came down, Mark showed me the school. I remember him walking me out to what's now our graduation stairs. At the time it looked completely different, not only the field but the stairs themselves. You'd walk down the stairs and then there was a little deck, you couldn't go any further. And we were looking at this really, really bad patch of field that he called a soccer field. I mean, it looked like a runway was down the middle of it that you could just fly a small plane on. It was completely worn out, more dirt than grass. And I remember Mark saying to me, well, it might not look like much, but whatever you can imagine, we can build. And I looked at him and I said, I can imagine quite a bit. So they wore their heart on their sleeves, and as you said, I don't like to use the word hate, but they certainly had a dislike for Branson. Branson was in the BCL at the time. And I think it's fair to say that neither Branson nor the university would have seen MA as a rival because we just weren't very competitive. And we showed up in tighter uniforms. I don't think anybody would have been surprised. But our guys, I mean, all they wanted to do was beat Branson. Branson was by far and away the number one rival at the time. University was a really good side, but wasn't somebody that we said, oh, you know, that's our big rival, you know. Wasn't as passionate for our guys. So those guys, in fact, most of those seniors played multiple sports solely as they described it to me so they could find a way to beat Branson before they graduated. I don't think it happened in any sport. It certainly didn't happen in soccer, but it just spoke to you know, their desire to beat Branson. I mean, one that I tell all the time is, I can't remember the kid's name at Branson. I'm sure all the alums that see this will. Good player. He wound up going on and playing at Brown, where I believe he was an all-Ivy player. And he was certainly one of the best kids in Marin County, and certainly for that class. And we had one of the Meyer brothers man mark him, and this was the time when Branson still played at their facility on campus, which is a super tiny field. And you know, to be fair, the difference between the two sides was pretty big, and we all know that. But we certainly made up the difference with desire and effort. And I remember at one point, a ball was put over the top as one of the Meyer brothers was man marking this kid. And it was run out for a goal kick. And it was clear from like 20 yards away that neither one of them was going to get it. It was going to run out for a goal kick. And yet, you know, our guys made it their mission to not let Branson beat us at all on effort and show them their desire to be accounted for and compete for the whole match. And I remember as the Branson kid pulled out, as he saw that it was clearly run over the goal line, you know, whether it was Ben or Mike, I can't remember, but he kept running, didn't stop, and ran headfirst into the tree that was only a couple of yards off the goal line. And he literally turned around and looked at the Branson kid in the face and just got right in his face and screamed, you know, just like a primordial, tribal scream, you know, just, it was super intense, it was super intimidating, and everybody was super fired up. I mean, it was just unbelievably impressive. One with FOMS, Friends of Mike Society, which I've told you guys before, but we had, one of our maintenance guys was a guy named Mike, and the guy sort of adopted him, and it was actually born out of me going to the cafeteria one day and just being disgusted by all the amounts of trash that was just left in there after lunch every single day. And I told the boys that I couldn't believe, you know, that we didn't do our part and at least clean up after ourselves, let alone everybody else. So guys like Richard Robinson and Justin and Chase Nelson and a few other kids decided to take it upon themselves to, you know, get the school to raise awareness. And, you know, I pointed out to the boys, I said, do you even know who cleans up after you guys? And of course they didn't. And I knew it was Mike because I would come in there at the end of lunch and see Mike come in and clean it all up. And so some of the boys stuck around after lunch one day and saw Mike cleaning it. They just felt horrible. So they took it upon themselves to sort of start this movement to get kids to have a greater awareness and appreciation for it. And they started FOMS, the Friends of Mike Society. So they got t-shirts, and I remember they did an announcement at assembly one day talking about the school needed to take responsibility for it, and all the kids were wearing their FOMS shirts. And Mike, as you can imagine, was blown away at this gesture. And so we sort of adopted Mike as I don't want to say a mascot, but sort of as a member of the team. And so I remember Mike wanted to come watch us play Branson one year, so we were still over at their school. And I remember we got there, must have been 3 o'clock, and Mike was sat in a chair at the center circle, just sitting there. We went over to him, and guys were so pumped to see Mike already there. And Mike said, "What are you doing?" Mike said, marking my territory. You know, been here for an hour, wanted to make sure everybody knew this was our field. And of course, as you can imagine, guys were fired up. I think we lost that day, to be fair, but it set the stage for a game we had against Branson later in the season here at MA. And I actually got the idea of asking Mike if he wanted to talk to the boys before the game. This is a big game, and I usually saw these moments as, like my time to get a last word with the boys and really make sure they're in the right place mentally. And so I felt like I was taking a little bit of a risk of asking, a guy that hasn't had a voice within our team before to have a voice at such a key and pivotal time. But I asked Mike if he would be willing to deliver the message to the boys as we get ready to play Branson in that final game that year. And Mike said, "Are you kidding me? Absolutely." So I remember as we came down the field, once again, Mike was already down the field, and this time he was sat on our bench. He was just sitting there like this, and he was just rocking back and forth. I could see all the boys were like so excited. I still remember Rich Robinson's face, just super pumped up. I don't think I've ever seen him so excited before. And the boys warmed up. We had a huge crowd out there that day. And as I brought the boys in, as the referee was trying to get us to kick off, I remember I asked Mike to come over and speak to the boys, and Mike was super intense, and all the boys would gather around. You could tell the boys were just like, "Holy crap, what's he going to say?" And they're all looking at each other, and guys have their arms over each other, and Mike looks at each one of them. He's super serious and super intense, and he looks at each guy in the eye with like piercing intensity. And then he looks at him and says, "I want you to look him in the eye and tell him, you ain't." I'm not going to repeat what he said, but guys were super fired up, and they started screaming and yelling. And that was the day we got our first win against Branson, which was really cool, especially for that group. And it was the following year that we then were able to win the NCS for the first time. So, I will say, watching those kids graduate was probably the toughest moment I had. I remember being in the locker room after that win, watching the guys sing and dance and everybody being super happy. And unfortunately, a feeling I've come to know pretty well, good and bad, I guess, is that while everybody else is super excited, I seem to be the only one that realizes it's my last moment coaching those kids. So, it becomes a tougher moment for me. I try to keep it in check because I know everybody else is really pumped up, but always tough for me to know that I'm not going to get to coach that group again. And, unfortunately, I guess I've been jaded by time. It doesn't get easier, but it was tougher to hide then. And I remember when they graduated, I was in tears graduating, or at graduation. I should have been happy for him, but just selfishly, knowing that with all the time I spent with those guys. I remember going into NCS that year, Peter Law wound up doing his ankle, I think in the first round of NCS, and he did it bad. And of course, we didn't have a trainer at the time. In fact, I was the closest thing we had to a trainer. I taped everybody's ankles from our soccer program to basketball, volleyball, I did everybody's ankles. And we didn't have, I don't even think we had an ice machine, so no way in the way of treatment. So Peter was such a key player for us, and to lose him and not have Esky at the same time was a huge blow. I mean, that's two of your better kids. And I remember playing Branson in the NCS final that year at USF, and I remember they just got a fluke goal. And to be fair, we weren't creating a lot of chances. And they're just holding on to 1-0 win, and it was a super physical contest. And to be fair, both sides didn't care for each other very much. I mean, the kids themselves didn't care for them very much. And I remember Matt Finkelstein, who I was super close to and coached club, and had been close to him for 4 or 5 years, was a senior at Branson at the time. And I remember Ross Porter off a corner hit it upper V, and Matt, who's like 6'2", 6'3", was able to take a drop step, jump up, and literally clear it off the goal line from going upper V, which obviously would have tied it. And I mean, it was that moment where you're just thinking, "Oh my God, it's going to happen today." And I remember Chris played in that game, and he certainly wasn't, he wasn't even close to being at his best. There's no way physiologically he could be. And I remember Andrew Narash wound up getting a red card at the end of the game because frustration just got the better of him, and he couldn't believe that as much as he and his class cared about MA so much that they were going out with a loss. Against Branson, no less. I don't think there's any question that that NCS final had a greater impact on us as a program and us as an immediate team than any other point in time. And then we go into overtime, no goals, and then we go to PKs. I just remember how nuts it was because the referees tried for like 5 minutes to get the fans to get off the field. They had no chance. Like, we literally took PKs, and if you can imagine the field being, or at least the half being a square almost, and with the goal being up here, like the fans were literally on the field, curling around to the goal line. And I remember University went up first, and I can't remember who it was that scored for University, but the kid gets up and he nets it. Good PK. And after he scores, he takes off his shirt and he goes running over the crowd. And he's just like, celebrating, getting the crowd excited. In the meantime, Dizzy walks from the midfield, all the way from the midfield line, and up to the spot. And Dizzy takes his PK and nets it. So 1-1. As you can imagine, that first PK guy, it's nervous. He's trying to settle nerves for your entire team. And Dizzy starts coming back, and as you can recall, the first referee is obviously the one that's blowing the whistle, was even to the spot. Second referee is on the goal line, making sure across the goal line. And then the third referee is at the midfield line, who's both keeping track of score and making sure who goes next. Well, the third referee, after Dizzy makes his PK, decides that the University kid should get a yellow card for taking off his shirt. So he goes over to the center ref and tells the center ref that the PK shouldn't count and we should have to take it over him. So we're getting penalized, and the center ref, the second referee, their keeper, and Dizzy, nobody was aware that a yellow card was being issued. So it had no impact on the PK. And so for Dizzy to have to take it again, honestly, I can't even imagine being in that position, having to have the nurse to step back up and take it again. And I remember I wanted to show my boys that, whether it was University playing against us or all the odds playing against us, didn't matter, we were going to find a way to win. So I remember looking at the referee, and I didn't get a yellow card. I literally don't get cards, but I looked at the referee and made sure that my body was open so the University players could see me. And as intensely as I could, I told the referee, make him take it again and again and again, because we're going to be here all day. We're going to make as many as we need to win. I remember looking at the University kids and them going, oh my God, this isn't good. So sure enough, Dizzy steps back up and he nets the second one too. And after that, everybody made their PKs. And I remember we were hosting the BCL final that year here, which is only the second time we had done that. And I remember DJ played Colin Mitchell up top. Colin, wound up playing at Oregon State, and then he played for the Quicks for a while. So he was a phenomenal athlete, very good player, super creative. And then you had Eric Anderson playing center mid. And they knew that they didn't have the quality that we did with 11. So DJ said, all right, we're going to sit in, we're going to play on the counterattack, and Eric hopefully picks up the knockdowns, and that's going to be our only opportunity. Sure enough, on bold, Colin's able to get behind us and scores against the run play after us dominating and creating chance after chance after chance. And then I don't remember who it was. Maybe it was Shawnee. Yeah, it must have been Shawnee that got taken down for the PK.
Yeah, it was.
But Shawnee gets in behind him as a 1v1, and Nate, who also played for me, came out, and Shawnee was able to beat Nate, and they were best friends, by the way. Shawnee beats Nate in the 1v1, and Nate reaches out late and grabs Shawnee, and rightly gets called for the PK and gets a straight red card. So Nate comes off the field, and they literally take one of their field players, who's a decent field player but didn't play club and also was a basketball player, and they stick him in the net. Kid had no idea what he was doing. So Nate decides to stand right by the goal to try to help this kid, try to catch this kid. In the meantime, all the fans are now literally standing right by the stanchion of the goal and on the goal line. So it takes 5 minutes for the referee to finally get teachers over to get all the kids to go back. So it's the proverbial situation of the field goal kicker being frozen out on timeouts and having to think about it and build up and anxiety. So here's Shawnee for literally 5 minutes, just sitting there waiting to take his PK. And of course, hindsight being 2020, I wish now, knowing that he missed, right before he was going to take it, then switch somebody else that hadn't been thinking about it for 5 minutes and let them take it. But needless to say, Shawnee took it, and Shawnee's definitely one of the better players we've had. I mean, Shawnee's such a fantastic player. He wanted to be a captain at LMU. And Shawnee just put it in the middle because he thought the kid would guess and pick a side and go. And Shawnee literally hit the ball right here. So the kid still to this day, I mean, you know, anybody can walk up to Shawnee, anybody in the street and go like this, and that's going to be his first thought the rest of his life. You know, so we wound up losing that. But that 09 class was so phenomenal, and nobody else. I mean, that probably was the easiest year of all time. It was just such a talented group. I mean, we lost to Jesuit, but you know, Shawnee was fantastic, had a back issue. So Shawnee and I were just talking about this the other day. I don't think he played a whole match for the whole season, just because. And you know, I think Jesuit, to give you an idea how great Shawnee is, he got to play the last 5 minutes of the first half against Jesuit, scored a goal and couldn't go back in.
Yeah, I heard about that. That's what you said.
And I think we wound up losing that year 2 or 3-1 to Jesuit. The trainings were a lot of fun because that group was so talented, and you know, to be able, and that's the other thing that I think we focus so much on results, but we really do focus first and foremost on effort. And I gotta say, you know, that when we get together at the end of the season every year and we talk about results and how we did and this and that, the reality is, I like training way more than games. You know, we win a game and it's more relief than it is anything else, because expectations and, you know, stress and dealing with anxiety. But man, training day in and day out, where you know we have more parity. Our training is 99% of the time more competitive than our games.
Yeah.
That's been true for quite some time. And, you know, I know that our players love training, love the training environment. You know, love being mentors to younger, talented players. I mean, that's one thing that, you know, has been hugely important to me, is creating a good environment. And, you know, I'll take a freshman kid that is a super talented kid and maybe not ready to compete just yet, but allows the older players to sort of take under their wing and be mentors. And of course, it's cyclical, because that kid in turn, that mentee becomes the mentor.